Hello, hello. We have here Not Like Us was playing. I first heard this song, I think it was the day it came out. It was on social media. People posted it on, you know, X or something. And this seems to be a thing with like um, very popular um, rap music, we'll call it. Bangers in the club. That's how someone put it. They said, I'm just listening to bangers or something. And I don't know, I was exposed to This Is America the day it came out. Someone in my guild chat mentioned it. And there was some other rap song that I'm drawing a blank on. Doesn't really matter. But I was kind of bored. I was just going through YouTube Shorts. That seems to be like the time killer now. Just scrolling um, these like 30-second videos and stuff. Um, and one thing that has been popping up has been No Doubt, and it made me think about how influential are they as a band? How have other bands influenced them? My sister, and their relevance if I were to be reborn. So this kind of originates with my sister who had the album Tragic Kingdom growing up, and it's remarkable because like my sister is classically trained in the flute, piano, and she's also a singer. She sings. She's sung in the choir. She's sung for her talent show. She's played in um, high school plays. I think she did creative ministries maybe once, and she's someone who goes to the uh, city to see plays with my mother. I don't know how often she does that anymore. Um, and she was singing um, in like a church. I don't know, maybe several years ago, and I saw her perform some sort of like she performed some Handel songs. Maybe about a decade ago, I went up to visit her, and she sang, and but for this person who has all this music in their life, I don't know her contemporary music taste. I know growing up she had a 3 disc CD changer. That was something she probably got before me, and she had Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill. She had Tragic Kingdom from No Doubt. She had the Puff Daddy's album that had Missing You on it, and I was able, I think, to recall maybe one more album that she had that was, contemporary music, but probably other CDs probably include like, soundtracks to the musicals she saw, maybe like Phantom of the Opera. I don't know exactly what she's seen, but it seems like a very limited amount of music. I know eventually she got a iPod Nano, but I don't know what type of music she filled it with. And I remember we were riding in a car once, and she was listening to Black Eyed Peas, and I think it was I Got a Feeling, and she mentioned how she liked that song. But other than that, like we used to drive to school. Um, I had a car, she didn't, and we would drive to Carlisle, Pennsylvania. It's about a 4 hour car ride, depending on traffic, and I remember playing like Daft Punk once, and she said it was like repetitive, and I guess some of it is. Um, but we would typically listen to like comedy albums. We listened to Mitch Hedberg. We listened to Dane Cook. I know Dane Cook kind of sticks out because when I first saw him on Comedy Central Presents, I didn't like it, and I remember a classmate of mine in high school brought him up to the professor, and like the professor kind of didn't really care about this story, and I guess he had some popularity amongst some of the students. I really wasn't into it. But then I saw him perform at Carnegie Hall with Dennis Leary, and it was a pretty good set. And I wound up seeing him a few times. He was a headliner at Continental Airlines with Bobby Kelly opening. My friend Chris and I went, and we saw him maybe a couple more times. We saw him at a Patrice O'Neill benefit that Bill Burr hosted, and I don't know if we went to two of those. I think we maybe just went to the second one. It was like maybe the Lincoln Center or something. We went to the Carnegie Deli on the way back, and but I recall my sister and I enjoying that. That was I don't know, one of his first albums. Um, but anyway, so I had a dream. So I saw that they had No Doubt performing Spiderwebs in the Sphere, and I'll just bring it up here if I can spell sphere. So I'm not going to click it, but you can kind of see that they have the stage here, and it kind of like I've seen some of these things and they kind of look cool, but this stage setup, I don't know if it's just these camera perspectives, but it looks like people are very far away, and then they have this giant, thing in the background. Um, I was not a big No Doubt fan when they came out. I do have that song "Don't Speak" on my iTunes. Um, but to me, so the thought that crossed my mind, or I had a dream about, was my sister basically saying like I could do without No Doubt, and I don't know if that was because something in the dream where like I wasn't a huge fan, but I get kind of like a Mighty Boss Tones type feel from that Spiderweb song. I don't know how to describe it because it's not like instrumental with but there's just some sort of like 90s funky type of, I don't know how to describe it, music to it, and it's not something I typically hear outside of that generation or from other bands. Um, and I have, I mentioned like bands that influence them. I once heard that, there was something on Nirvana, and basically like every single band in the late 90s was claiming that they were influenced by Nirvana, which includes Limp Bizkit and whatnot. Um, I don't hear it if people say they are, but I then started joking about how Nirvana killed Guns N' Roses. Um, but I wasn't a big fan of the song Spiderwebs. Later on, No Doubt kind of changed their style. There was that song Hella Good. Didn't really resemble that first album. And then, of course, there are some songs from Gwen Stefani that are kind of, there's that Holla Back Girl and whatnot. Um, but like the way the dream went was my sister thought that I would immediately agree with her that no doubt could be left out if we could if we did life over again I could do without no doubt like we're gonna curate bands that are popular and good and like if we're taking the top 10% or the top 1% or whatever of music that we have, we're going to start excising bands and shrinking that list even more and and so maybe we do without no doubt. Um, I don't know if she's still married to the guy from Bush, um, but I do know that early on, she was in a relationship with this bass player, and that's what "Don't Speak" is about, or something. Um, that's a song that I downloaded later on. I remember listening to in Colorado, um, where I was going to the gym, and I might have it pop on the playlist and stuff. Um, But I thought maybe something I would do now is kind of do some commentary on how things that appear in my YouTube feed have influenced my life or have been a part of my life or are kind of, just, random commentary on how I feel about it. Sounds like I have some food. Here I got some tap room from Patchogue. So that's kind of all I have to say about No Doubt. Um, there was like Just a Girl, Spiderwebs, Don't Speak, and I guess when I used to watch like MTV and those songs might pop on, I might change the channel. There were a couple music channels at the time. There was VH1, there was MTV, and there was Much Music, which later became Fuse. And I might try the other channels to see if there's anything better on. I guess there was MTV2 as well. I'm just gonna get that food. It smells good. I think I will circle back to music, which includes Sublime versus bands like Limp Bizkit. Uh, so another thing that pops into my feed is Halo 3 and different Halo things. I guess the Halo collection has been released on PlayStation 5, and these videos are like there's some like nade tricks where you bounce to different parts of the map, and they're hidden Easter eggs. And I vaguely remember doing this with my friend for Halo 1. We would log on to Xbox Connect and get onto a map and just, kind of explore the map, hidden areas. But I guess in later Halos, they actually put things in spots like guy playing the piano, some little family, tucked into a nest, little nook or something. I had a dream that Halo was banned. From what? I don't know, but I remember getting the Master Chief Collection when Xbox One came out, and it was kind of a letdown because it was incomplete. For many years, my friend Chris and I would talk about how, what if they just released Halo with Halo One with Xbox Live, and my friend Chris, who was a computer scientist, mentioned how the programmer said it would never happen because the code it would require too much work with like the code and stuff. So eventually they, I guess 343 Studios released the Master Chief Collection, and it was incomplete. And I think I wound up returning it, and my time with Halo has basically ended, and Bungie has been in the news where Sony's writing off like a $700 billion loss due to their association with Bungie. And, the first thing that came to mind was the re release of Halo on it, but I forgot they made a game Marathon, and I guess there was something else that they were releasing. And my thoughts on it are just Bungie has been trying to ride the Destiny, I guess, was a failure. They've been trying to ride the Halo wave, but I think first person shooters are dead. I guess Call of Duty might still have some popularity, but there are other games like Fortnite and I guess WoW Classic and stuff. I just don't think that a first person shooter is very interesting. Like for me, that one of my favorite games of all time was Doom, and Halo. I certainly had very fond memories of, but like once I start playing World of Warcraft, I don't think every first person shooter has been like a letdown. And I prefer linear corridor shooter. I just like cool guns and whatnot. That's why I like the game Turok. But every game seemed to try to replicate Halo until they started trying to replicate Call of Duty. Um, I think the two games that killed video games the most were Halo, with their two weapon loadout and whatnot, and Grand Theft Auto 3, where every game after Grand Theft Auto 3 had to be an open world sandbox. And it was kind of the death of like short, high replayability games, like you might see on the Genesis or something. Something like Gunstar Heroes, where you can beat it in like an hour and you play it over and over. Let me turn the mic off for a second. All right, so the mic is back on. Yeah, I didn't want anybody to hear me munching on fries. I was concerned that the fries might not be crisp. They were coming from Patchogue. Um, I'm about 10 minutes north of the tap room, and there are some restaurants that are even closer that if I order delivery, the fries might not be crispy, but they were. They were good fries. Tap room was never really my spot. So I used to live in Patchogue, but when I lived in Patchogue, I didn't really go out to the bars all that much. Um, I think I went to Hofbrau to eat a few times. Um, Other than that, you know, I didn't hit the bar scene. And but prior to me living there, I would visit Main Street and go to some of the restaurants. So Canvas was down the other day, I guess Thursday, and I first noticed this because my home screen, my um, whatever the page that you visit when you open your browser is set to my Seton Hall um, login, and that's on a different computer. And when I opened it, I accidentally clicked some sort of or no, it just said that Canvas was down, but then I clicked something and it was directed me to some sort of MS and something. Um, I was talking about Halo 3, and I don't think it's going to be a very in depth, very lengthy conversation. So, my experience with Halo is basically um, growing up, I had a Sega Genesis. Then, after Sega Genesis, I had 32X. Then, the anticipation was I was going to get a Sega Saturn. Um, but there was also a desire for a PlayStation because the PlayStation version of Mortal Kombat Trilogy had more characters than the Nintendo 64 version. My father got me a Nintendo 64, and it was one of the best Christmas gifts ever. Because we got Mario 64, and we got Mortal Kombat Trilogy, and we would later add Mario Kart and um, a plethora of games. I had about 60 games, and it was a solid system. It was a social system because it had four controllers that you could play with friends, and we would play on get-togethers and whatnot. But after that, towards the end of the cycle of Nintendo 64, around the time of Majora's Mask, which is why I didn't have Majora's Mask, I got a PlayStation 2. And there was also another system coming out around that time. It was an Xbox, and this was like, it's kind of like a joke. PlayStation was well established. The other systems were well established. I had a GameCube and a Dreamcast as well. And the thing with Microsoft and the Xbox was it had these gigantic controllers that were, like weren't very ergonomic, and there was nothing that really drew me to the system. There was nothing that said, "Oh, I got to play that." You know, Nintendo 64 had multiple games of the years, and they used to have on the box like only for Nintendo 64, and it might have been like GoldenEye, um, Ocarina of Time, and they might have had another one that had three game of years in a row or something, at least two, and they had other games like Diddy Kong Racing and Mario Kart and Star Fox 64, and there were a lot of exclusives on that system. And I guess that was something at the time where like there was less, third party and games that were universally available on all systems. The draw to buy a specific system was the exclusives, and Xbox really didn't have any. And so eventually, I played Halo. I got cut from football, and I was invited to someone's house, a friend of a friend's, and we played Halo over LAN, and it was fun. And we played over Xbox Connect, and my friend and I would have Verizon to Verizon unlimited calling, and we would be on the phone for hours playing 2v2 Blood Gulch. We would be playing Wizard Rockets, no shields, Karayan shotguns, no shields, and FFA, chill out and whatnot. And it was a fun time. Halo 2 came out, and they removed the pistol, which was always my favorite weapon. I wasn't good enough to be a sniper, but 3 shots to the head. I used legacy stick layout, and I could just, strafe around you and shoot you in the head. Halo 2 is okay. Pretty good, I guess. And Halo 3 was, okay, I guess. But that was pretty much the end of it. I felt subsequent Halos were not very good, and there were other games that were taking up my time around then. And I never really got into the campaign, so this, I guess Halo's known for having the legendary mode. I never played legendary. I never really played the campaign. It wasn't very, wasn't something that, I had to do, like I don't think there was anything. I played a little bit of it, but I don't think there was anything that said, like, this is great. Like, this is the best first-person shooter campaign experience I've ever had. No, for me, it was just multiplayer. I don't think there was any draw to the campaign mode. The story, I wasn't really interested in stories at that time, and I even forget, like what was the objective based thing? Because like GoldenEye kind of changed the layout where you rather than just a linear corridor shooter like Duke Nukem and Doom, um, GoldenEye introduced missions where you had to do certain things, and I don't know if Halo had that. For me, the nail in the coffin for shooters was I saw Jeff Kaplan talking about, what almost killed WoW was Battlefield 1942 or something. He says, it's one of the greatest games he's played. I played Battlefield, I think it was like 2050 something or something. It was a more futuristic one, and I played it with some guildies from a guild that I was in, Remnant, in WoW Vanilla, circa like 2006, and I had no clue what I was doing on these maps. There was a scoreboard, and like I was just chicken running around with its head cut off type thing. Um, but Call of Duty to me, ended it because every weapon was a some sort of rifle, some sort of sniper rifle, and I didn't like the progression system where like you enter a game and you're being hit by a drone as soon as you enter, and but something tells me those mission based ones that the campaign I would probably enjoy the campaign of Call of Duty more than Halo or something. Knicks won. How about that? So I saw a clip of this guy, and I couldn't tell what team he was on. So they kind of have it down here. I don't know if you can see that. I thought it was Washington because that looks like a W. How's that? How's Milwaukee? Oh, I guess it's for Wisconsin. Is that it? This one's going to the U.S. Department of Education. So I engage in an opposite. Like if I have a thought, like I need to brush my teeth, I do the opposite. I'll do something else before brushing my teeth. It's just a thing to to make sure that I'm in control of my thoughts. And so I have a paper that is due, I guess, Monday, and I've been consistently been doing opposite. I don't feel pressured to. It's only a six-page paper. It's topics that I've covered before, and it's topics that, you know, it shouldn't take me long to do this. Um, that said, like I want to make sure that it's. I thought I would do it today, but again, engage in opposite. Um, Before I do it, I need to read a 5-page paper, and then I can, just engage in doing it. Um, a little like this paper, even though it's simple and it's easy, it's been causing me a little bit of stress. Um, so I have a bachelor's in biology and chemistry, and that was, like I never wanted to be a bio major. The way my undergrad wasn't. I felt I deviated from me making my own decisions. I let other people speak for me, and part of that is, it was their job. These people advertised themselves as academic advisors, where they knew better. Like, hey, you want to go to medical school? These are the courses you need to take. This is the track you need to do. And, I instilled my trust in them. I said, okay, this is your job. I'll let you help me decide and stuff. And by doing that, I wound up not getting out what I wanted to get out of college, where I wanted to, I wanted a period of moratorium. That's something that I've been introduced to in my current graduate studies from Newman and Newman, this um, development through life, where they speak of how, you know, people at the age of like 18, freshmen in college, are in a period of moratorium where they're experiencing new roles. And that was actually something I set out to do. I had played the Catholic schoolboy from K through, from pre-K to 12th grade, where I had sat there in a uniform, I had sat there in a suit, I had followed a curriculum, I was doing things by what was expected of me. And to me, I wanted it was what I had to do to reach the things I wanted to do, but I had always intended college to be an opportunity to learn what I like and dislike and what I was good and bad at for, for the purpose of discovering if there was a better fit for me. Was there something I enjoyed more and was better at than healthcare? And I think if someone sat down with me and truly evaluated what I wanted, it would have been a PhD and not an MD. It would have been medical research and not patient interaction. Now, I took measures to interact with patients where I had worked on my bedside manner, being sensitive to the needs of other people, trying to make people feel comfortable by projecting warmth, and also instilling confidence in them, which would be implied by my credentials. And because I went to the Pre-Med Society and expressed interest in pre-med, I basically became a biology major by default. And I saw the future of healthcare being more computer assisted, and I wanted to be basically a computer science major. And I think had I gone that route, I would have had much more satisfaction with my degree. Also, no one ever really suggested a chemistry track, pre-health curriculum. Everything was basically kind of bio, and I wish I would have had more marketable skills. So when I graduated, I looked for things that I could do. I also I told my father I was putting graduate studies on hold until I resolved sleep issues. I had obstructive sleep apnea, which would cause sleep paralysis and chronic fatigue. I also had insomnia. So if I was going to a traditional on-campus school, you know, trying to fall asleep, let's say I have class at 10 a.m. And I need to get up by 8 to make it to that class. So I really want to be asleep by 12. So I would potentially go to bed at 11 with the expectation of falling asleep by 12, and that's giving me an hour for sleep onset. You know, that might work, but a lot of the times I had terrible insomnia. I still have insomnia, and it might be, 12 o'clock rolls around, I'm not asleep. 1 o'clock rolls around, I'm not asleep. 2 o'clock rolls around, I'm not asleep. 3 o'clock rolls around, I'm not asleep. 4 o'clock rolls around, I'm not asleep. 5 o'clock rolls around, I'm not asleep. And now it gets to the point where I'm contemplating just staying up so that way, I don't, I, I'll just catch up on sleep later or something. And I would basically go to class and I would spend the whole time combating the urge to fall asleep because I felt it was rude to fall asleep in class. And I really wasn't getting anything out of my lectures because I was just so fatigued to even, pay attention. So if I was going to graduate school, I didn't want to, risk all that money and time investment if there was uncertainty that I would be able to stay awake for the classes. So with like a traditional on campus, I would need to make sure I was falling asleep on time and being able to stay awake during classes. Um, so I had surgery, and once I had the surgery, I started, seriously pursuing other things, graduate school. Um, but at that time, I was also like at a crossroads where do I just get a job and start a family, or do I continue with the efforts that I've made since grade school? And for a moment, I considered other options, but those other options could lead to healthcare administration. And actually, that's kind of where, like, I spoke to some people and they told me, you got to do what you're passionate about. And, they kind of convinced me to go back to other areas of studies. And that's when I, decided, kind of like a JD PhD thing. And the thing I didn't want to do law school because there's a lot of law that I'm not interested in, like corporate law, tax law, and all that stuff. And but I discovered that there are programs specific to health law. So I studied health law, and then I entered a clinical psychology PhD program. And so I completed my health law studies. That's done. Um, and as far as the clinical psychology PhD, I completed 17 courses at Saybrook. I was getting, A's in every course, basically, except for one where I felt the grading was arbitrary. There was a research course, and, like the highest grade on one thing was like 178 out of 200. And some assignments didn't receive a grade, even though I did the work. And I have those things documented. And so I completed what should be a master's level PhD, and unfortunately, I was dismissed from that program after completing 17 courses and 51 credits. And you need 30 credits for a master's, and then you got to do a master's project. But unfortunately, I didn't have a course sequence completed, and I put that on the professors for poor advisement, for not advising me to take a certain course sequence that would allow me to complete my master's project in October of 2023. But then I found another program and I completed more coursework, and unfortunately that also came to an end after I was dismissed for some sort of vague allegation after I made a complaint in good faith. And currently the Department of Education is investigating that. And I gave them every single communication I have. So I handed over Every single text communication I had with professors, every single communication I had via WhatsApp with students, and from those text communications, there should be nothing that is grounds for dismissal. I also sent emails to them, and I also sent some of the coursework, and I feel that there's nothing there that warrants dismissal from the program. So now I have enough credits to suffice a nationally certified counselor, which is 48 credits, and I also have enough credits, which is 60 credits for the New York State licensure. I have more than 60. So 60 is required to become a licensed mental health counselor in the state of New York. I have more than that, but I really haven't had an answer if I can get that without having the master's. And but what I don't have, it doesn't really matter either way because I would need to get the supervised hours. Now I have experience doing. I have a year under my belt working at a. I have about 2 years experience. Um, that could go towards the supervised hours requirement of the licensing requirements. Um, so I finish all my work, and I was happy in my last program. I had a desire to teach some of the courses. I reached out to a professor and I said, I have some interest in teaching this course, and so now I'm in another program just to get the master's so I can again apply to another PhD program. But it's like, why do I have to do this again? I will turn over, the Department of Education's doing their investigation, but I'll eventually turn over all the communications to someone to make it public so other people can see what the investigation is about. Um, let's waste some time. So, another thing that pops up in my feed, you might see here on my YouTube. So I went to the New York City, the New York Auto Show at the Javits Center. So you might see some cars here. Um, this guy just popped up in my feed. Whether he was part of the algorithm. I watched some of them. um, some of these cars are nice to look at. I'm not going to buy a Ferrari anytime soon. Um, I had a GTI and whatnot. But so a couple of years ago, I had videos in my feed where I would daily get updates about when there's a sale on televisions. So I was going to purchase a television for my parents, and I wasn't considering a television for myself. I don't watch enough television to warrant really a TV. But then since I really have nothing to do, I thought of purchasing a television for myself. And I went to the store today, and I looked at a demo on a television, and like I wasn't like blown away like I was in the past for some reason. And but what I did do is I came home and I went to I put this thing on, this demo, and I have a QLED, and I wanted to see like, what's the difference? Is this going to look any worse than what the television looked in the store? And the answer is no. So I'm wondering like, why is my television seemingly limited in what it can produce when watching movies? Um, like there's times where I've watched. I used the James Bond movie, um, No Time to Die or something, as like a benchmark testing of the screen, and I can see that it can produce blacks. There's the opening scene where um, the villain comes in. He's wearing like a white and black uh, snow jacket, and the blacks are there's that contrast. And when I started this television, it has this whole um, oh, this one says a QLED demo, so maybe this one's specific because we're looking for Samsung OLED demo. I guess we're looking for the demo that's on this TV right now. I kind of wish I didn't bring up the TV. Joe Miller.